based upon reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or viewing that 80s BBC television adaptation, or the 2000s Disney film adaptation, or Disney's Peter Pan 2 around that time, your idea of the Blitz is one of the more horrifying and just, a time when everyone was living in fear. It was almost like being in a police state in and of itself, don't go outside because the bombers are coming, and then all the policemen and the soldiers are going, stay inside, just this creepy time, just it was our traumatic childhood. I remember reading an historical account, and there were other historians who would claim this. Actually, it's kind of a British propaganda myth. Actually, the citizens, particularly young people, were quite rambunctious and seemingly enjoying themselves during the Blitz. They were cheering and quite excited at the prospect of all the bombs going off. It was these young hooligans and punks. They thought it was just a riot. People were rushing toward the bomb sites. Looking at the destruction quite morbidly. That's what historians say. John Boorman's own autobiographical account claims, kids thought it was a really exciting and fun, interesting time. Hard to imagine. But I think a film like Hope and Glory is really important to kind of fuse that cultural memory / myth with what the historians might describe as the kind of clinical, kind of ugly reality of what actually happened, a de-romanticizing of it. John Boorman acknowledges that kind of ugliness of the actual clinical reality, and he presents us here, he illustrates here where that romanticism came from. It's that sense of adventure that he as a boy felt, which I think makes Hope and Glory one of the most tonally interesting film dramas in the English language, because we have a film which very honestly, and I think quite boldly, depicts a certain ability of the human brain during childhood to present one really horrifying, objectively, events is quite exciting in moments of adventure and grandiosity. Perhaps it's something to do with a culture that really likes escapist literature, that when things that might be considered quite dangerous otherwise occurring, you see them as, adventure, war, or conflict. You see these things as fun, exciting, and action-packed, rather than potentially violent and the causing of maiming and injuries and death. Perhaps it's the way in which, a child doesn't understand the seriousness of the events. Maybe Boorman, and the character in this film that represents him, was fortunate enough. Perhaps that almost is the implication, that because there's a very powerful scene in the film where there's this girl who's absolutely distraught that her mother's been killed in a bombing, and the other kids are treating it like it's this exciting little event, like, whoa, so-and-so's mother died, wow, like this is really getting intense. And the film is presented in such a way that you understand. I mean, if you were a kid once, you can kind of understand, frankly, why the kids think that way. And it's this brilliant film which presents the reality of the situation whilst also presenting the child's spin on it in the same film, in the same frame. It's all going on. Impressive film drama. This good stuff. What could have been a essentially forgotten novelized prose autobiography, or some boring one-man show play nonsense. What we have is John Boorman realizing that cinema is a medium which could truly convey the powerful dichotomy of what's going on in this narrative, and was the only appropriate venue for what's going on in Hope and Glory. A very powerful film, one which takes the medium seriously and also enforces some of the more pressing and perhaps not talked about enough, or like often ill-considered moments of human understanding of suffering. As a child, one has to, in many instances, perhaps learn empathy, learn that other people exist, and often this is considered, some people will go so far as to say that, children are inherently narcissistic. I think that's a bit much. I mean, maybe there's some truth to it. It just seems kind of a needlessly provocative thing to suggest, but then, psychologists say random things all the time just to get, clicks and whatever. That's the word. Whatever. There's not validity to quote, discipline, unquote. I emphasize the quotes. Anyway, what we have with Hope and Glory is a film which does take seriously that developmental moment wherein one is a younger child. They don't really take into account, how they might feel if something had happened to them and they see it happening to someone else. One of the more moving components of this film is John Boorman, that child stand-in for Boorman's own formative years. His reaction to the older gentleman, going on about all these women he's presumably slept with over the years, his lovers, and then he's like, oh, I don't remember her name, and he goes, yeah, Sheila, you said you went on this rant last year. And like he's the one, I think it's because he can't empathize with the fact that it's like the child, and the old man's not being empathetic to everyone around him. He's just rambling about care and consideration, and it's almost like the child is the one who can understand why he wants to have that selfish moment, because he's at the end of his life and everyone he knows and has loved is presumably dead now. But like in his mind, that was a beautiful monologue. In his mind, they'll all be young and beautiful forever, and I think he's probably crying because he realizes that he probably treated them like trash at the time, just some like young male scoundrel. And now he's thinking like they were so beautiful, like, what did I do to deserve them? And, I was trash to them, I defiled them, and like, they ought to have been cherished, they're beautiful. He's had kids and daughters since then. Yeah, it's a powerful film. It's got me going on about all this emotional stuff here. Isn't that kind and nice? Anyway, thanks again, my friends. Really appreciate it. Thank you.